There are places in America, tucked away in the folds of old maps and older mountains, where time doesn't move in a straight line. It eddies and pools, saturated with memory and myth. The hills of West Virginia are one such place. Here, the nights don't just get dark, they become tangible, a heavy blanket woven from shadow and silence. The mountains, ancient and brooding, seem to absorb all sound, as if holding their breath, as if something else is already listening. This is a land of deep hollows and winding roads, where folklore isn't a collection of quaint stories, but a living part of the landscape. Whispers of the past cling to the mist, speaking of strange lights, of creatures that walk the line between worlds, and of omens on silent wings. For centuries, these stories were kept close, shared around hearths and on front porches. But in the mid-20th century, one of these whispers would grow into a scream that echoed far beyond the Appalachian ridges, drawing the world's eyes to a small town on the banks of the Ohio River, Point Pleasant. By 1966, Point Pleasant was a quintessential American river town, but on its edge lay a place where predictability ended, the West Virginia Ordnance Works, known to locals as the TNT area. A relic of World War II, it was a sprawling 7,000-acre maze of abandoned concrete domes and decaying factories. By day, a curiosity. By night, a place of local legend, a vast, dark territory where anything felt possible. It was here, on the cold, moonless night of November 15, 1966, that the veil between legend and reality was torn. Two young married couples, Roger and Linda Scarberry and Steve and Mary Mallett, were driving through the deserted compound. What they found was something impossible. As their headlights swept across the derelict powerhouse, they illuminated a figure that would sear itself into their minds and into American folklore. It wasn't a man or a beast. It was something in between. A creature, they would later report, that stood nearly 7 feet tall, its form vaguely human, but crowned with a pair of massive folded wings. But it was the eyes that paralyzed them with fear. They glowed like burning coals, two hypnotic crimson discs staring from a faceless head. This wasn't the reflected shine of an animal in headlights. This was a light that burned from within, a malevolent, intelligent luminescence. The witnesses felt a profound and terrifying sensation, that they were not just being seen, but being assessed, scrutinized. In that silent, terrifying moment, the four young people understood a primal truth. They were prey. Panic shattered the stillness. Roger Scarberry slammed his foot on the accelerator, the car lurching forward as he fled back towards the highway. But escape was not so simple. As they careened down the dark access road, the creature rose into the air, and when they tried to escape, it followed. The witnesses were adamant about this detail, a fact that made the encounter all the more surreal. It didn't flap its enormous wings. It simply glided, a silent, dark shape locked in formation just above and behind their speeding car. They pushed the vehicle to its limits, hitting speeds over 100 miles per hour on Route 62, a frantic race against the impossible. Yet the creature kept pace effortlessly. It was a specter of death, a shadow that clung to them, its glowing red eyes a constant presence in their rearview mirror. The sound of their own engine and terrified screams were the only things breaking the unnatural silence of the chase. The creature itself made no sound, no cry, no rush of wind from its wings. It was simply there, a silent, inexorable pursuer. When the couples finally burst into the Mason County Sheriff's Office, pale and shaken, their story was met with initial disbelief. But their terror was too genuine to dismiss. A deputy followed them back to the TNT area, but found nothing. The creature was gone. However, the story was out, and it was only the beginning. In the days and weeks that followed, a strange dread descended upon Point Pleasant. The very air seemed to change. The woods, normally alive with sound, fell unnervingly silent. Lifelong hunters reported an eerie stillness, a complete absence of wildlife. At home, dogs refused to leave their porches, whining at some unseen threat in the darkness. Birds would not land in the trees near the TNT area. The natural world itself seemed to be recoiling in fear. Then came more tangible evidence. Locals began to find strange tracks, massive taloned footprints frozen in the mud near the river, suggesting a creature of immense weight and power. The impossible was leaving its mark. For 13 months, the sightings continued. Dozens of credible witnesses, from firemen to businessmen, reported encounters with the bird, as the local paper dubbed it. It was seen perched on rooftops, gliding over the river, and staring from the darkened woods. The creature became a local phantom, a source of both terror and fascination. They called it the Mothman. Then, as the Christmas season of 1967 approached, the sightings converged on a single vital artery, the Silver Bridge. A 39-year-old I-bar chain suspension bridge, it was the lifeline connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia to Gallipolis, Ohio. On the evening of December 15th, during rush hour traffic, the creature appeared again. Drivers reported seeing it, a towering dark figure standing silently on the bridge's superstructure, its red eyes gazing down at the cars passing below, a silent sentinel against the cold winter sky. 1 month to the day after the first major sighting, the Mothman was back. And this time, it wasn't chasing anyone, it was waiting. Moments later, at 4:58 p.m., a single critical I-bar in the northern suspension chain failed. With a sound like a deafening crack of thunder, the Silver Bridge gave way. In less than 20 seconds, the entire structure twisted, buckled, and collapsed into the frigid waters of the Ohio River, taking with it 31 vehicles and the lives of 46 people. It was a catastrophe of unimaginable scale, a tragedy that scarred the town forever. In the immediate grief-stricken aftermath, the Mothman was largely forgotten, overshadowed by the very real horror of the disaster. But as the shock subsided, the questions began. The creature was last seen on the bridge just before it fell. Had it been a harbinger of doom? A malevolent force that caused the collapse? Some say the Mothman was a demon, a monster drawn to the energy of death and suffering, and that it caused the bridge to fall. But the old families in Point Pleasant, those with roots deep in Appalachian soil, say otherwise. They draw from an older wisdom, a belief that the world is filled with signs. They look back at the 13 months of sightings, at the silent chase, at the final vigil on the bridge, and they see not a monster, but a messenger. They say he was trying to warn them, that each appearance was an attempt to alert people to the impending disaster they could not foresee. Was the Mothman a creature of destruction, or a tragic misunderstood Cassandra, its terrifying appearance masking a desperate attempt to save the very people who feared it? This question lies at the heart of the legend, a mystery as deep and dark as the Ohio River itself. And in the decades since, the story has only grown. After the collapse of the Silver Bridge, the Mothman vanished from Point Pleasant. The sightings stopped, but the legend had taken flight. Today, the story is no longer confined to West Virginia. Truckers on lonely mountain passes still report a massive winged shadow gliding over their rigs before vanishing into the night. Hikers deep in the national forests speak of a sudden, oppressive silence, followed by two glowing red eyes watching them from the canopy, just before a sudden rock slide or flash flood. The pattern remains chillingly consistent. Every credible sighting seems to come just before disaster, a mine collapse, a plane crash, a chemical spill. It has been reported before earthquakes in Mexico and nuclear meltdowns in Europe, a silent herald of tragedy appearing in the final moments before the unthinkable happens, and with each appearance the same terrible irony plays out. Every warning goes ignored. How could it not? Who would believe a story of a 7-foot-tall winged man with burning red eyes? The warning is too strange, the messenger too terrifying. And so, disaster follows. And so, the legend endures, a modern myth born from a very real tragedy, a story that reminds us that there are still shadows in the corners of our world, mysteries that defy easy explanation. And here, in these ancient mountains, the locals still know to listen to the silence. When the wind dies, when the crickets stop their song, and everything goes deathly quiet, it means he's near and watching. The truth is, in a place like Point Pleasant, West Virginia, truth has always been a slippery thing, tangled in the roots of old trees and whispered on the fog that rolls off the Ohio River. Long before anyone saw a creature with wings like a bat and eyes like burning coals, the land itself was trying to issue a warning. The first sightings weren't the first signs, not by a long shot. The people of Point Pleasant, going about their lives in the autumn of 1966, felt a change in the air. A cold spot in the season's warmth. A static charge of anticipation for something they couldn't name. They didn't realize what the forest had been trying to tell them. Strange happenings before the creature. It started with the animals. Their instincts, older and sharper than any human reason, picked up the scent of the unnatural first. Farmers noticed their cattle would stop grazing all at once and turn their heads toward the dense woods bordering the fields. They would stand there, stock still, for hours without blinking, their deep, placid eyes fixed on some unseen point in the shadows. They wouldn't eat, they wouldn't low, they would just watch. It wasn't just livestock. Inside the quiet homes of town, pets grew agitated. House cats, normally docile and familiar, hissed at empty doorways, fur raised along their spines as if confronting an invisible intruder. They'd cower under beds, refusing to come out, their frantic energy a stark contrast to the silence of the house. Then came the sound. Every night, just after midnight, a single dog would start. Then another and another, until every dog in the valley joined in. They howled in perfect, chilling unison. It wasn't a normal bark at a passing car. It was a mournful, terrified chorus, as if answering a call only they could hear, a summons from the dark heart of the woods. One farmer claimed his prize hunting dog, a brave animal that had faced down bears, refused to leave the barn for a full week. It whined and shivered in the hay, its eyes wide with a terror its owner couldn't comprehend. When he finally dragged it outside into the daylight, the dog planted its feet, pulling back from the tree line with all its might. It fought so violently it tore 2 claws from its paw on the gravel drive, choosing self-inflicted pain over whatever waited for it in the trees. Animals know things before people do. They feel the tremors of the earth, the shift in the magnetic field, the approach of a predator. And something in those woods, something ancient and patient, was waking up. The animals were just the first to feel its gaze upon them. The man at the power plant. Long before the Mothman became a local legend, the whispers of its presence began in the lonely, forgotten corners of Point Pleasant. On the night of November 12th, a full 3 days before the famous car chase sighting, a power plant worker named Eddie Harrow stayed late to finish some overdue repairs. The sprawling facility was empty, leaving him completely alone. Just after 2 a.m., the overhead lights flickered violently. Then, they died completely, plunging the massive building into an unnerving silence. In the pitch black, Eddie heard a strange noise from directly above him, on the roof. Heavy, deliberate footsteps. Not running, not pacing, just moving. A slow, methodical weight shifting across the corrugated steel. Annoyed, thinking it was a trespasser, he grabbed his heavy-duty flashlight and climbed the steel ladder to check. Halfway up, the sound stopped. The roof above him groaned under a sudden immense weight. Eddie froze, his heart pounding in his ears. Cautiously, he aimed the beam of his flashlight toward the edge of the roof. 2 long, thin claws, gray and skeletal, slowly curled over the metal lip. Eddie didn't scream until 2 glowing red eyes leaned over the edge, hypnotic and unblinking, inches from his face. He lost his grip and fell 20 feet, shattering his arm on the concrete floor. He survived, but the terror of that night silenced him. Eddie Harrow refused to speak about what he saw on the roof until the day he died. The abandoned bunkers. Just outside of town, nestled deep within the overgrown woods of the McClintock Wildlife Management Area, lie the haunting remnants of a bygone era. These are the old TNT bunkers, a sprawling complex of concrete domes built during World War II to store volatile explosives. After the war, the facility was decommissioned, and nature began its slow, relentless reclamation. For decades, these decaying structures served as a forbidden playground for the youth of Point Pleasant. Sneaking into the bunkers was a rite of passage, a test of courage against the darkness and the ghost stories that clung to the place like the thick summer humidity. They were huge concrete domes, their stark utilitarian forms now softened by time and neglect. Buried in thick tangles of vines and surrounded by murky swamp water, they felt like ancient tombs from a forgotten civilization. But then, the rumors started to change. The familiar ghost stories gave way to something new, something more immediate and terrifying. After the sightings began in earnest, the teenage dares and late-night excursions stopped. The bunkers were suddenly left to the silence and the shadows. But one boy, 17-year-old Ray Wallace, couldn't shake his curiosity. On a cool evening, armed with only a flashlight, he claimed he went inside one of the most remote bunkers, determined to see if the stories were true. The air inside was cold and heavy with the smell of damp earth and decay. As his light cut through the oppressive darkness, it fell upon something that made his blood run cold. He saw deep scratch marks carved into the thick concrete floor. These were not animal scratches from a bobcat or a bear. They were impossibly long, perfectly parallel, and chillingly, evenly spaced. It looked as if massive talons had been deliberately raked across the ground, a gesture of immense power, like something testing its own terrifying strength. Drawn deeper into the bunker, he found more evidence. At the far end of the cavernous space, he discovered piles of shredded newspaper, mounds of dead leaves dragged in from outside, and strips of torn insulation pulled from the walls. The materials were arranged in a way that looked disturbingly, undeniably, like a nest large enough to cradle something far bigger than any known bird. When Ray Wallace returned to town, breathless and pale, no one believed him. His story was dismissed as an overactive imagination, another tall tale born from the eerie atmosphere of the TNT area. That is, until the very next night. Two fishermen, casting their lines into the Ohio River nearby, reported seeing a huge, dark shape suddenly burst out of the roof of that very same bunker. They described an explosion of movement, a chaotic eruption that sent a shower of concrete and debris scattering across the tops of the surrounding trees. The creature, whatever it was, had left its nest, and now it was loose. The woman at the river. Of all the accounts that surfaced during that strange year, one of the most chilling came not from a car full of teenagers, but from a woman who had spent her entire life by the Ohio River. A local widow named Mary Albright claimed she saw the creature more clearly than anyone. Mary was a fixture in the community, known for her quiet resilience after losing her husband, a steelworker, in an industrial accident a decade prior. She was not a person given to flights of fancy or hysteria. Her word carried weight. She lived in the same small house her father had built, a stone's throw from the riverbank. It was close enough that the Silver Bridge was a constant presence, its metallic groans and sighs during heavy traffic, a familiar, almost comforting soundtrack to her days. She knew its rhythms as well as her own heartbeat. One morning in early November, a particularly dense fog had settled over the valley, swallowing the bridge and muffling the world in a cold, damp silence. Following the same routine she'd kept for 40 years, Mary went out at dawn to hang her laundry. That's when she saw it. A figure, standing waist-deep in the murky water, perfectly still against the current. At first, she thought it was a man, perhaps a fisherman who'd waded out too far. But it was too tall, too unnaturally motionless. As her eyes adjusted, she saw that what she'd mistaken for a heavy coat were wings, folded around its body like a leathery gray cloak. She froze, clothespin in hand. The figure's head, featureless in the gloom, tilted toward her. It was a slow, deliberate movement, not of surprise, but of acknowledgement. She said it felt ancient, like it recognized her, or perhaps the place where she stood. An unspeakable dread washed over her, cold and heavy as the river itself. She dropped her laundry basket and ran inside, bolting the door and hiding in her pantry until the full light of sunrise burned through the fog. When she finally summoned the courage to look outside again, the river was empty. The world looked normal, except for one thing. Her sturdy laundry line, the one that had weathered countless storms, was ripped clean from the posts, and the clothespins from her fallen basket were scattered across the wet grass. Every single one was broken in half. They weren't shattered or crushed. They were perfect, precise splits, as if an impossible force had been applied with surgical care. It was a quiet, deliberate act of vandalism that felt more menacing than any overt destruction. A message. Mary Albright packed a single suitcase that afternoon. 2 days later, a moving truck arrived. She moved to live with her sister in Ohio, abandoning the home she'd known her whole life. When her family asked why, she refused to speak of what she saw. All she would say was that the river wasn't safe anymore. She never returned to West Virginia. The bridge collapse, the part no one talks about. Everyone knows the Silver Bridge collapsed, a catastrophic failure of steel and engineering that plunged dozens into the icy Ohio River. The official story is one of structural fatigue. But not everyone knows what the survivors reported in the chaotic aftermath. Amid the screams and sirens, some said they saw a massive, dark figure perched high on the suspension cables, a silent sentinel against the winter sky, just minutes before the metal groaned and snapped. A truck driver, his vehicle teetering on the edge of the abyss, swore he saw the creature glide over the river as the bridge fell, its enormous wings reflecting the frantic emergency lights like polished steel. And one teenage survivor, pulled from the freezing water and racked with hypothermia, kept whispering the same baffling words. He tried to stop it. He tried to stop it. A warning or a failed attempt at intervention, but the detail that haunts Point Pleasant the most? When first responders finally scanned the dark river with powerful spotlights, dozens of witnesses on the shore saw two piercing red eyes glowing from the dense treetops on the opposite bank, watching, not fleeing, not hiding. It was watching the rescue unfold, as if it were taking inventory, as if counting the survivors. Years after, the newspaper theories. For years, the local paper received anonymous letters. Some blamed government experiments, some blamed curses, some claimed the Mothman wasn't here to harm people, but to observe them. One letter stands out. He comes when we are closest to breaking. He comes when the future is about to change. He doesn't cause disaster. He warns of it. He warns, but we never listen. The letter was written in shaky handwriting. The return address line was blank, but the postmark? It was stamped from Point Pleasant on the 40th anniversary of the collapse. The new sightings. Today, the sightings are rarer, but not gone. Truckers on Route 35 say something flies just above the treetops, pacing them for miles before vanishing. Hikers report strange circles in the frost, perfectly round, with the grass flattened in a spiral. A security guard at a chemical plant said he saw a dark shadow standing on an upper walkway at 3 a.m., wings folded, head tilted. When he ran upstairs to confront it, nothing was there. But every metal railing on the platform was warm to the touch. The chilling theory, locals. Whisper. The chilling theory, locals, whisper. Locals believe the Mothman appears before disaster. But the old families, ones who've lived in Point Pleasant for generations, have a different belief. They say the creature doesn't just warn about disasters. They say he chooses who hears the warnings. And if he appears to you, if he stares at you with those burning red eyes, it means you're carrying a piece of the future you don't yet understand. In the Appalachian Hills, folklore isn't just storytelling. Sometimes it's survival, and sometimes it's a warning delivered by wings,